Discover hope and healing from the other side. Welcome to Messages of Hope with Suzanne Giesemann.
Listen, they're all around you, close as a thought or a memory. Messages of hope. Messages of...
Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode. This is really special today. The topic is intuition in the workplace. We're going to go outside the workplace, though, because I understand my guest has stories that just apply to life in general. I hope you'll pick up some good ideas about how you might be more intuitive than you think already and how to use it in your own life. My guest is Janice Martin, and the surprise is Janice is my sister. So I'm going to bring her in here, and then I want to just tell you a little bit about her while she's on screen. Hey, Janice. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. So everybody always wants to know, where is everybody in the hierarchy? I'm the baby and Janice is the middle child.
Yes.
And I will tell you that growing up, we were different, had different styles, but we generally got along pretty well, wouldn't you say?
I would say that.
Yeah, except the time when Mom had to reach over the back seat of the car and swat us with the hairbrush, right? Remember
I
that?
usually got that more than you because you were perfect. And mostly because I wasn't smart enough to realize to sit behind her like you did so she could reach me much easier than you. So
wow. Okay. Maybe I was a little more intuitive then. I don't know. But I will say that we have a wonderful relationship now. And what stands out to me is how mutually supportive we are throughout everything. And I was lying in bed this morning thinking about our relationship. And what came to mind so clearly for me was when my stepdaughter Susan passed. And we flew home from Croatia to North Carolina for the funeral. And you were living in Pennsylvania or Delaware at the time. I'm not quite sure. Pennsylvania at the time. And on your own, you drove down to North Carolina just to be there for me. I remember you saying, you're going to be strong for everybody else, but who's going to be strong for you? I'm coming whether or not you want me. And of course, remember that? That meant so much to me. And then the two of us have sat vigil. We sat vigil with Mom and Dad when they were going through hospice. And all of you listening now, you know how that brings families together.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So my sister, Janice, I'm probably going to bring that up several times for anybody who joins us later in the show and doesn't realize that's who we're dealing with here today. But I have you on the show because you in your career have always astounded me with how intuitive you are and how it's added to your work. And I just have often wondered, gosh, if other people work that way, how it would change things. So why don't you start off by telling people what your career is right now?
All right. So for the last 11 years, I worked as a director of sales in senior living. So I work with families who were looking for independent living, assisted living, and memory care. And that's a very difficult and stressful decision for them. And then I also just in August of 2021 wanted to really personalize what I do and just make it all about the individual whom I'm working with. And so I started my own company, which is Senior Liaison of Central Florida. And I just guide people. I hold their hand through the entire process. I research the communities that I refer them to. I sit with them. I understand completely what is important to them, their care needs, their financial situation, their location preference. Do they want something big and glitzy? Do they want something homey? What do they want? And then that helps me to know exactly where they need to go to. And I work with them through that.
I can see how anybody could see how being intuitive would be important there. And I love that you don't have a cookie cutter solution for everybody.
Not at all. Not at all. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. And go ahead.
Well, for years you worked in individual facilities and you would have people come in, and there you had to fit them into the facility. You know, you're trying to sell them a place. But what impressed me, as I got goosebumps right now, is you just had very high ethics, that you never tried to sell something that you didn't believe in, and you were looking for what was right for them.
Yeah. It's interesting because corporate will oftentimes send in shoppers, and they will be testing to see how your sales process or what your sales process looks like.
Well, let's stop a
And
second there. Just explain what you mean by corporate.
So the companies that owned the communities that I worked in, so they would hire these secret people to come in and pretend like they were prospects.
Oh, wow.
To see what it was like. And the very dangerous thing about that was that if I was sitting with somebody and I knew my community was not right, I'd get up and I'd shut the door and I'd come back and I'd have to say, I have to trust that you're legitimate because I don't believe you're in the right place right now. And I want to talk to you about why. And I would send them to other places. And so that was kind of dangerous. It never got back to haunt me, but I really felt like it was the right thing to do. And there are companies like mine nearby that they're the reason why I started what I do, because a lot of what they do, I feel, is completely unethical, and it's in their best interest. And I say over and over and over again, it's almost like a mantra. It's not about me. It's about you. If you decide, if I've taken you to 2 or 3 different places and you decide you want to stay home, or you decide you want to go to Michigan, that's okay. This is your decision. It's not about me. And that's not always the general practice.
Yeah, unfortunately. But
so
yes.
Throughout the sales process, throughout sales in senior living, and I think sales in any aspect, they have a process, they have a procedure, that they do training when you go in. And in my career, a lot of that training focuses on a process called funneling. So you ask a question and somebody gives you an answer. And like, well, what brought you in today? Well, I was driving by. Well, okay, you were driving by. Was there something going on in your mind that made you want to do that? Well, yeah, my mom hasn't been well lately. Tell me what you mean by she hasn't been well. And you just keep funneling down until you get to what's really going on with that individual. I believe that most people come to that with their own agenda. They're listening to their story so that they can figure out, how am I going to overcome any objection and make you do what I want you to do?
I would expect that from a salesperson.
To commit to my community. Rather than come in with my objective, I feel I've thought about this, and I don't realize that I ever did it, but it's what I do. I slow everything down in me, and I try to connect my energy with their energy. It's more than just listening to their words. I can feel what they're feeling. I can feel fear. I can feel sadness. I can feel stress. I can feel anger. I can feel all of that. And how do I adjust my words, the speed of my words, the energy that I'm putting out to what I feel is important to that individual person at that moment? And the most important thing is to just get rid of your own agenda and just be in the moment. Be very mindful.
That is fabulous. I try to relate everything to my work as a medium, and that's merging. What you're talking about is merging with the energy field of your client, and those in the spirit world is what it's all about. And that is so exciting to me. We've really never had this conversation with my sister, Janice Martin. We've never really talked about how you do that, and I'm so impressed. Good.
Well, I don't, you have said to me, and people have said to me over the years, you need to teach people what you do. And I'm like, I feel like you can't necessarily teach. I've always called it compassion. You can't teach compassion. You either have it or you don't. But the more that I thought about this discussion today, I really do believe it is something that you can train yourself to do.
You just gave practical steps there. You said exactly what you do.
just merge with them.
But the
And
slowing
there-
down piece was
Yes.
important. Yeah.
A lot of people would say, well, that's just experience. It's just experience. If somebody says something, you know what the consequences of not doing something about that is. For instance, I think the greatest story I have is this man came in, and he came in by himself. He wanted to move his mother into the community that I was at, and he had no idea what to do. And I could tell he came in with a defensive attitude. He was very closed off. You're not going to tell me what to do. This is my mother, and you're not going to tell me what to do. And he talked about his wife, and there was conflict there. There was some kind of conflict there. And it's given me the power to say things to people that I would never say to somebody else. And sometimes when I say things, I think, oh God, I shouldn't have said that. But it's always the right thing to do.
So when you say it's given you the confidence, you mean your intuition?
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just comes out. And I said to him, if you don't do something, your wife will leave you. Is it worth your marriage to not do something for your mother? And he was like, well, no. And I said, I want you to think about that, because I believe that's a real possibility. So over the course of a few weeks, he came in and he decided that he was going to keep his mother at home. And I said to him, and I say to all people, what is your line in the sand when you know you can no longer do this? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, for many people, it's when they become incontinent of their bowels. That's it. I can't do anymore. And he goes, okay. And I said, I want you to also be aware of what a urinary tract infection looks like in the elderly and what to expect if it happens. And he goes, okay. 1 week later. You
don't have to go into details. I remember this story, but exactly what you saw is what happened.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He called me a week later. He said, my mother woke up. There was poop everywhere.
You're going into details.
I took her to the hospital. She had a urinary tract infection, and my wife left me. How do you know these things? And I was like, I just knew it. I just knew it.
So this was not like this same scenario had happened several times before.
No.
Wow.
He was just determined that he was going to do it on his own without any help. And okay, if you're going to do that, you need to know a few things. So
did it register to you at the time? Oh my gosh, that was exactly what I saw, and that was pretty cool.
I just knew it. Yeah, I know it.
And that's the key about intuition. You just know.
You just know it. Just know it. I had another man that came in. He came in with his wife, and his mother had dementia, and he didn't want to move her to a community. So he hired a private caregiver to be with her all the time. And the caregiver took her out in her car. Her mother didn't realize that this is a caregiver, thought she was with a stranger, and tried to jump out of a moving vehicle.
Oh my goodness.
But he insisted she's not ready yet.
Not ready for assisted living?
His wife was sitting beside him, ready for anything. His wife was sitting next to him. And I looked at him and I said, sometimes you just need to man up and do the right thing. You are in a position that you have to make decisions for your mother. You are waiting for a crisis. The crisis happened. You have to do something. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that.
Did I say that? Yeah.
I can't believe I just said that. And the woman went, thank you. That's exactly what he needed to hear. And I was like, okay, maybe it'll be all right. And so he moved her in, and
moved her in.
It was a really positive experience.
Wow. Well, before we go any further, I have to tell everybody, y'all, I'm so proud of my sister. She wrote her first book. Here it is, The Complete Guide to Assisted Living, everything you need to know before, during, and after a move. And I read every word, and it's really amazing I mean, our mom went to assisted living. Didn't she go
Yeah.
like 4 different places till she was finally happy? But
Yeah.
there are things in here from your years of working in the field that most people don't know. And
Yeah.
so I can't recommend this highly enough. If anybody knows anybody in a position that just doesn't know what to do, check it out on Amazon. Really outstanding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. So did you ever get in trouble for some of these things? Well, I guess your bosses would love it because they ultimately move in, right?
They did.
Yeah.
And I will always say things like they are, but I try not to be blunt. I try to say things in a kind-hearted and compassionate way. But there are just some people that I know they're not going to listen to. Now, you don't want to wait for a crisis. You need to move something. Those two guys, they were not about that. They needed, this is the way it is. You have to do something. And I don't ever talk to anybody else like that. But.
So this process you go through where you slow down, I love that because you can't be present for the insights, the knowing that just arises naturally if you have an agenda, like you said earlier. Yeah. So have you actually been aware that's what you're doing? You're slowing down so that
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Huh. There are some people that I can feel their energy like this, and a slow talking to them is not going to work. I have to speed up my talk. This is what we have to do. I have to speed everything up. And then there are other people, they're just so overwhelmed. You just need to slow it down. We're going to do this one step at a time. This is what we're going to do today. And when that gets done, then we're going to talk about the next step. But we're just going to do it one step at a time. And and when I match their energy, there is this connection. They you understand.
Wow.
You understand.
Matching the energy. That, I love the way you put that there. Huh. So all of you listening, how might you make that work in your life? Not just in a work situation, but with your family members, right? Match their energy. There has to be something going on that, at the soul level too, where that you're just coming into resonance with them. And then that opens the gates for the awareness of what they need. Very cool.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How about another story of when that worked for you?
Well, I had a gentleman who wanted to help me move to assisted living. He wanted, and I usually get family members, but this was a man who needed it for himself.
Okay.
And I had made arrangements to go take him to assisted living, to go tour a couple places. And the day came that I was supposed to go pick him up. I was going to pick him up and take him there. And man, there was just something. I thought, I need to call first. I have to make sure everything is okay. And I called and there was no answer. And I thought, that's really weird because he always answers the phone. Called a half an hour later. He didn't answer. And I thought, I have to go. Something is going on. I have to go. Never done that before, ever. I just, okay, on to the next thing. I have to go.
Oh, you mean
I drove.
You had an appointment with him, but since he didn't answer, you could have just said, well, I guess
he was an hour away. He was an hour and 15 minutes away.
Huh.
If you didn't answer, okay.
So this is, I can see something unfolding here, but this is a case where you weren't matched with his energy, but you were because you'd been dealing with him already and you're already tuning into his field. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I drove to his house and I rang on the doorbell and there was no answer. I was afraid he was in there on the floor alone because he was living alone. Fortunately, his house was for sale and there was a lockbox. So I called the realtor and I said, please give me the code. Something's wrong. I need to get in the house. And the realtor gave me it. And I went in, I walked around and he wasn't there. So I went next door and I knocked on the neighbor's door and I said, has there been an ambulance or anybody come by that house in the last 12 hours? And she goes, yes, the ambulance came last night, took him away.
Wow.
I found him. I called 3 different hospitals and I found him. and was able to make sure that he got to where he needed after that. But I knew something was wrong. And there was nothing to indicate that. He hadn't been sick before. He was fine. It was fine. But it was just, I need to go forward with this.
That's another key point with intuition, is acting on the nudge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's so many times I think all of us feel, well, that's nothing. And there are two circumstances outside of work. It's kind of a personal thing that we're so powerful to me that it made me realize that I have to listen all the time.
Let me interrupt you just a second. We've had a couple hundred people join us since this show began. For those of you who don't realize, Janice is my sister. I'm so darn proud of her, I can barely stand it. So yeah, I hope that everybody's learning a lot from this. So, okay, you're thinking of two examples now.
So I went to visit Mom at her assisted living, and we were having dinner together. And I had my back to the room. I was facing her, and the rest of the dining room was behind me. And I heard a sound. And I looked around me, and nobody did anything. And I thought, something's wrong. So something has happened. Something's wrong. And I got up and I looked around the dining room, and everything was fine. People were eating. Something made me walk behind. I don't know if you remember, they had that little bar at Spanish Springs. They had that little bar that you had to step down into.
Yeah.
A resident had stepped into there, fell, hit her head, and was bleeding like I have never seen blood before.
Oh my God.
And I just dialed 911. Nobody got up to look. Nobody heard that. Nobody knew anything. Who knows how long she would have laid there, but something's wrong. I have to figure out what this is.
Wow.
And I'm talking, there was a lot of blood. And if she had laid there for who knows how long, she seriously could have bled out. But because she was in assisted living and there were nurses there, they were able to get to her very quickly.
I understand now why. I have heard this from people who you've helped. They say you're an angel. In fact, when you were starting your business, you were getting testimonials together, and that word has come up more than once around you. And what a gift that is. Yeah, because you work from the heart, and it's not about you, and it's not about the money that flows hopefully afterwards, but it's about service and following those nudges. And when you come from that place, it's no wonder you're open to experiences. You said you had another story like that?
Yeah, I was sitting at work. I was sitting in my office, and I could not see out to the outer community while I was in my office. Outside of my office was a little bistro area that had a prep kitchen area. And I was sitting in my office, and I heard something. And I thought, I've never heard that before. It was kind of a clatter, but it wasn't really a clatter. And I came out and I looked around. There was nobody down the hall. There were a couple people sitting in the bistro. They were sitting there, right there. And I looked over at the concierge and I said, did you hear something? And he said, it might have come from there. And I started.
See, there's an example of somebody who hears the same thing and it's just sitting there continuing on. Yeah. There's something in you that says, go investigate. Cool.
I was going to turn around and go back in my office, and I thought, I need to look. And I walked and I looked over the prep counter, and there was a waitstaff having a seizure on the floor.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was able to call out to the concierge, dial 911, get a nurse. And I stayed with her until the paramedics and the nurse came.
Wow.
You have to act. When you think, oh, somebody else will do it, or, oh, it was nothing, don't ever ignore those messages that are sent to you to do something. You're the one. I said something to someone about, if you have a heart attack or something. And she said to me, what she learned was, if you're in an emergency situation, don't wait for people around you to pick up their phone, even though they're probably all on their phone. Don't wait for them. You look at one person and you say, you call 911.
Huh.
You pick one person out of the crowd, say, you dial 911. And even if nobody's around you, you be the one. You be the one to get up and find out what's going on and make sure everything's okay before you go back to whatever you were doing.
You know what that reminds me of as you say that is you're the one that spirit says she's going to listen.
Yes.
We're going to ping her through the heart and this knowing because she's going to take action.
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. Very
Yeah.
insightful.
I had another time where I was working and the woman across the hall, her phone kept ringing. She was in a conference down the hall and her phone rang and it stopped. And then the phone rang again and it stopped. And the phone rang again and I thought something's wrong.
Yeah.
We got up and I walked down the hall and I opened up the door and I said, Glory, something's wrong. Somebody's trying to call you. You need to get up now. And somebody was trying to call her to tell her father had just died. So, you know, even silly little things like somebody's trying to call you.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, acting on it, following up.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But I think sometimes in my work, it's also fully understanding the whole picture. I was called to ask family for help. Their husband, the mother was living in her home. She was caring for her husband who had advanced dementia and he was in bed most of the time. She was exhausted and completely overwhelmed. And they called me in because they felt that they needed to move him to assisted living.
The family called you to help mom.
Mm-hmm. And so I came to their home and I sat down with them. I didn't even see the man. I sat in their home and she was telling me, and I said, no, we're not going to move him to assisted living. We need to bring in hospice. Hospice needs to be involved at this point to help you and to help your husband. And they did. They brought him in. He died 2 weeks later. If he had gone to assisted living, they would have had to pay a large move-in fee, probably around $2,500. They would have had to pay a lot of money to get him in, move his things there, and then deal with the grief and the guilt that because they moved him, that was why he died.
Oh, wow.
Because I experienced that a lot. And I just knew, no, we're not going to do that. And, you know, in my business, I get paid if people go to assisted living. I don't get paid if I refer them to home care or I refer them to hospice. It's not about me. That, you know, this is what we need to do for your family right now.
Wow. That's what I love about your book is you have these stories throughout it and real stories that actually happen. And they're eye openers.
Yeah. And the book is important because it's everything from how to overcome the promises that have been made. Please don't ever put me in one of those places, or till death do us part. Overcoming those promises because now life is very different from when you made those promises. You never expected that it would be this difficult at this time of your life. How to have the conversation, you know, what to look for, how to go on a tour, what to look for, how to choose an apartment, just everything.
Yeah. Totally written from the heart. So it's really funny because I wanted to support you in your book and get the book out there, but assisted living is not in line with my work as a medium and connecting with higher consciousness until I realized this is what you have always done in your work is bring that in. You don't know that I remember this story, but one thing that has impressed me is how you sense what people need and you think outside the box at work. Do you remember the ping pong table story?
I was going to talk about that. Yes. So it was actually the guy whose mother jumped out of the car.
Oh,
so I said, so tell me about your mother. And he goes, the only thing she loves is ping pong. Okay. And he goes, she was like an Olympian ping pong player. And she would go, even with her dementia, she went to the senior center 5 times a week to play ping pong. And I said, then we'll get her a ping pong table.
Now, this is when you're working as director of sales in an
Yeah.
assisted living facility that has no ping pong table.
There's no ping pong table. I said, we'll get her a ping pong table. And he goes, you would do that? I said, why not? And he goes,
That is what's called making an executive decision.
why not? And well, then God bless him. He said, I'll buy it. If
Really?
you will do that, I'll buy it. And I said, well, let's go figure out where we're going to put it. And found this beautiful, it was a room. It was actually a room that they didn't know what to do with it. And one whole wall was an open, it had a mural of an open field with sunflowers in it. And it was so cheerful, but they never used it. And we put that ping pong table in there, and the staff had something to do with the residents, and the residents had to do something with each other. And it was just, it was awesome. It was
so
awesome.
maybe not an example of using intuition, but that awareness of doing the right thing, thinking outside the box, and what is going to be helpful to your client.
What's going to make a difference? What's important to that person?
And that's intuitive, just to sense that. Yay.
I think many people would just say, we're not going to, where are we going to have a ping pong table? Where are we going to put it? I said, we'll figure it out. We'll get a ping pong table.
I will tell you all.
I'm glad you remembered that.
I do, because I was so impressed by that. And I'll tell everybody listening, I'll brag on you a bit, that you always broke records and sales for people because of the way you work from the heart. And I remember how frustrating it was, because the people at the corporate level, they had their numbers. And if you couldn't reach it, or people, well, just for whatever reason, the numbers would go down and go back up again. They didn't understand that that's just the nature of business, but they were only concerned with the numbers and not the people. And that's a shame when it got that way. But I do want to just say, as we're talking about assisted living, and you make this clear in your book, that assisted living is not your grandparents' old folks' home anymore.
A lot of people think it's like a nursing home. They really do. And many people will call me and say, I need to put my mom in a nursing home. And I'll say, well, tell me why you feel that way. Tell me what's been going on. And they are so surprised to learn what assisted living is like. It is dramatically changed over the past probably 15 to 20 years. You know, they look entirely different. The dining options are just amazing. They hire these chefs. They hire people that have run country clubs. The food is generally fresh. Although you can never make everybody happy as far as the food goes, they really do go above and beyond.
Can I jump in a second? I got to tell you, you may remember this story that Ty and I went to a silent auction, or one where you put a bid in on all these items. It was for a charity. And we saw that there was a dinner for 4, steak dinner at Steeplechase restaurant. And we said, we never heard of that restaurant. We bid on it and we won. And we called to make reservations, and it turns out it was an assisted living facility, and we got to eat dinner in their private dining room. Oh my God, it was so funny. We walked in, and all these people that live there are like, who's that? Who are they visiting? They're like, we won the auction.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, when Mom stayed in assisted living, boy, the activities and the decorations. I will brag a little more on you. Janice is a professional singer, and she also sings in assisted living places to uplift people. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You have another story about using your intuition?
I wrote down a couple here. Let me see. I think, I've been writing articles for a local newspaper. It's called Health and Wellness. And I've really been enjoying it. And that's what actually prompted, maybe I could actually write a book. I advertise all over the place, and it's a lot of money, and nothing ever happens. Nothing ever comes from it. It's usually a personal referral that comes to me. But I've been
that's the human side that thinks we have to advertise, but it's not the way you're really connecting with people.
No. So I've been writing these articles, and I actually had this one man call. He goes, I've never picked up this magazine before, but something made me get it. And I went to your article, and it was like, when is it time to move to assisted living? And he goes, I figured I better call you. I think it's time. And I just got another call just last week. Another woman, she said, I've never seen the magazine before, but something made me pick it up and made me realize I need to call this person. And and again, it goes back to the human side, the personal side. And like the way that I wrote the book and the way that I wanted to write the book was like you're sitting with your best friend who's having a conversation with you, telling you stories and giving you solutions and advice on what to expect and how to move forward. And I didn't want to write a textbook. I didn't want to, say the same thing 5 different ways just so it was a 250-page book. Boom, this is what you need to know. And I think it really speaks to people because I write like I'm sitting here talking to you.
You do.
Yeah. And I actually had somebody who has written, not you, but a lot of books. And he actually said to me, I really like your writing style. He goes, in fact, I like it more than the way I write. He goes, where did you learn? I said, I don't. I'm blessed that I can type incredibly fast. So it goes as fast as my brain goes. So it's like, so it was easy to just get it out.
Cool. How about, or let me ask you about listening to what people are not saying. Can you address that?
Oh, that's very important. That's very important. I'll say, well, what prompted your call? Well, my mom, she's been declining lately. What do you mean by declining? Well, she's okay. And I said, define declining. What do you mean by declining? Well, she's had a fall. So she's had a couple falls. They don't want to say what's really happening, but there's something going on. So just kind of just dig a little deeper. Don't just fluff it off. Oh, they were driving by and decided to stop in. It's more than that. Something prompted all of this. So, I looked up about what is an intuitive because my first inclination was, it's just what I do. Am I really an intuitive? Although we've talked about this a lot over the years, that I am an intuitive. But I wanted to find out what is the definition of intuitive. It said, psychic ability is intuition that has been paid attention to, developed, and honed. Intuition is the first step of being psychic. And I like that because it is a step. You have to be aware of it. And every single day I say my prayers and I give my thanks to the many blessings that I've been given in my life and for the people that are in my life. And the end part of my prayer is always, allow me to be aware of opportunities that present themselves to me that I might not otherwise be aware of.
Oh, nice.
And I think we have to set that intention to be mindful, to be aware, to be open to looking at somebody and saying, and I'll do this, what's going on? And they say, I'm fine. I said, no, you're not. What's going on? And then they'll tell me what's going on. And it's usually quite significant to not just say, oh, you all right? Yeah, okay, fine. Well,
How many of us do that? Yeah. Yep.
But you have to, you really have to. I made another note. Again, you always have to trust yourself. Just go with it. There's no harm in going with it. Just see what happens. Does it open up something that is important to them that they didn't feel safe enough to share because nobody slowed down enough.
Slowing down.
To really be open to listening to them. I feel it's interesting because, like I said, I'm glad that I'm able to feel what other people are feeling, but I don't absorb it. And
very important. So many empaths have a challenge with that because they
I am able to just let it go. Okay, this is what they're feeling. Let me experience what they're feeling. Let me help them because of this feeling. Now go. Release that. And I think that's very, very important. I've realized recently how I physically feel things now, which I feel my husband, Rodney, I feel what he's experiencing.
Oh, yeah,
And
true.
I feel it. And this came especially true. He had to have a tooth pulled last week. I didn't know what tooth was being pulled. Didn't know. I just knew it was there. After he got his tooth pulled for 3 days, I felt such pain in my tooth.
No.
And I said to him, show me what tooth they pulled. And it was the exact tooth that I've been feeling pain in. And when it finally subsided, I said, your tooth's feeling better, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, it really is. And he goes, you're scaring me.
Well, with that, I can just explain that to everybody. That's because when you live with somebody, your two individual fields become one field. It's part of the reason why we want to correct our partners so much, because we think they're us, literally, energetically, you know.
Yeah.
But you're so merged with him all the time that you pick up on that. Was that the story we were chatting about before the show went on the air?
Yeah.
It's not always easy to live with an intuitive spouse. I was reading Ty a story as we were driving. We had a long drive to make this morning, and I was reading him the first story from a book that some friends gifted us. And I could tell when he was tearing up, it was very emotional, because my voice would start faltering, and it got to the point where I couldn't tell who's tearing up first, because we just merged. So you do that. No wonder you're picking up on Rodney when you do it so well with clients you've just met.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And it helps me to look back on previous relationships and wonder why I was so anxious all the time, why I was not in a good place. And when you're not in a good place, you're not intuitive anymore.
Which leads one to make poor choices in relationships, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So very easy to do it in a workplace, to be intuitive in a workplace where you don't have that emotional connection to it, right?
Yeah.
Huh.
And one of the things that I realized that I had to talk with families because they connected with me so strongly when they made that decision to move their loved one in, and we had developed a very strong bond and a deep trust. I had to sit with them and say, I need you to understand, I need you to make this decision, not because of our relationship. I'm not the one providing the care for your mother. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a caregiver. Our relationship is going to move on to where I pass you off to the nurses and I pass you off to the caregivers. I'll always be your advocate. If you're not getting the care and the satisfaction and the communication that you need, come to me and I'll help you with that. But I'm not going to be giving the care. And I need you to understand that before you make your final decision. And, they usually did make it, but I always felt like it was very important to say that, because I didn't ever want to come across as a used car salesman or to oversell something that was not going to be provided down the road. It's understand that.
What jumped out at me there as you were saying that was that word trust. They trusted you. So how important is that in the workplace when you're working with clients, that they could feel your heart, and that makes all the difference in the world?
It does. It really does. Yeah, it really does.
Well, any final words for anybody who's listening or watching about bringing that intuition into not just the workplace, but your life, or anything you didn't have a chance to say?
I don't think so. I think I covered all the notes that I had written. It's just, again, to not enter into any situation with your own agenda. Your agenda is to get the sale. The sale is a bonus. The agenda should be to be able to provide confidence and trust and care and whatever that person needs. And if you do that, the sale, the move-in, the whatever will happen. And if it doesn't, you weren't the right fit. And that's okay. That's okay. It's just important to not just go in with this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to get 3 move-ins today.
You've seen that. You've seen that over and over in others.
Over and over again. They're only concerned about their numbers. And I've never been about the numbers. If we get it, we get it. But I'm doing the best that I can for the individual and for my community. But no, it's like, and they would do that. They would do that. I want you to get 3 sales today. And I said, if I can, I will.
Yeah, never gave in to that pressure.
Oh, never. No. And that's why I wanted to start my own business, because the corporate culture was not in alignment with my core values. And when I realized that, I knew I had to do something that was the right thing to do for people I serve and myself.
You know, you just brought up another topic before we end here, and that is the courage it took you to leave that corporate culture with all the benefits and start your own business. And this is something that a lot of people listening will relate to, because so many people in our community of kindred spirits here who watch the podcast, listen in, are not satisfied in their work, and they want to do something more from the heart, and they want to have a job change, but they're not sure how. And you manifested this new career change for yourself. And remember the time when you created your very first job in assisted living, and you what color the wall is going to be? Remember that?
I really do. I really do. I did like a vision board, you know, all of that.
And you ended up in the exact situation you wanted. But I remember in this case, you reached out a couple times, a little nervous because you'd given up all that job security, and we both together tuned in, and you knew in your heart this is going to work. But things take a while, like you said, several years to spool up, but you just stayed with it because the intuition said, this is what I'm meant to do.
It is. You know, it was terrifying too. I was 62 years old, leaving my job where I was making a lot of money, to have no investors, no franchise that I was buying, no one to support me other than Rodney and the little savings that we had. But going in with the full confidence that I knew how to do this. And I knew that there were other people that had done it, and I didn't like the way they do it. I knew how to do it right. And what I didn't realize was how long it would take. But it's been 1 year and 8 months, and it's growing, and it's exciting, and I've never been happier. And I get to be called somebody's angel.
Yeah, all the time. And I love that you now have the book to help people all over the country and the world, because you can only help people in Florida, but now with the book, you will help people who.
Yeah, the book it can be for anywhere, wherever they are in the country. You know, there's some Florida state regulations that I put in there. People might want to look at what the regulations are for their states, but this is just like universal information that you need to know.
Right. But I'm just so glad you followed that instinct, even when the fear, the human side, comes up and says, this is not going to work. I can't do it. I remember you reaching out a couple of times, and we tuned in and said, just stay with it. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing the great stories with me. I had forgotten if you ever told me those 2 stories about just knowing something was wrong and finding bodies on the floor. That's terrifying and wonderful at the same time that you followed that nudge. So good for you. Thank you.
And pay attention.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
All right.
Everybody, I hope you got some good stuff out of there. Really great information. The biggest takeaway for me is match the energy of the person you're with, and you automatically merge with their field and will get a much greater sense of what they need. And you can do that in your own relationships, let alone in the workplace. So really grateful to Janice for that great information. So hope you'll join us. I think we have a couple more guests already lined up, and I'll be doing a Q&A session with my helpers, Bev and Lynette, taking your calls very shortly. So if you'd like to know when I'm going to be doing new podcasts, go to SuzanneGiesemann.com and go to podcasts, and you can get an email announcement 2 days ahead of time that will let you know when the next show is. So I love you all. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you here next time.